My presentation is on the Second Italio-Ethiopian War, also known as the War of Abyssinia. Starting with the background, Italy was an established kingdom and wanted to claim colonies in the Horn of Africa around the period of 1880s. This was a policy further enforced by Mussolini as he wanted to expand his fascism and reign upon close nations. This war was fought over the Treaty of Uchal, where Italians declared Ethiopia as Italian protectorate. This meant that Ethiopia would be controlled by Italy, an obviously angering statement that led to battle. Ethiopians were helped by Russians and French and ended up outnumbering the Italians to get a victory at the Battle of Adwa in 1896. This is extremely significant because it became the only African nation free of European control, despite its two neighboring countries of Eritrea and Somalia to be dominated by Italian rule. Over the next few decades, we would see relative stability in economic and diplomatic relations between Italy and Ethiopia. That is, until December of 1925, when Fascist Italy would sign a secret pact with Britain that was focused on reinforcing the Italian dominance. This quickly spread word and it reached Ethiopia, who saw it as a betrayal as a fellow member of the League of Nations. At this time, Ethiopian Emperor Haile Selassie was in power. He saw this as a direct threat, an indication of war, so he mobilized his army with an order that read, in the bottom left it says, all men and boys able to carry a spear go to Addis Ababa. Every married man will bring his wife to cook and wash for him. Every unmarried man will bring any unmarried woman he can find to cook and wash for him. Women with babies, the blind, and those too aged and infirm to carry a spear are excused. Anyone found at home after receiving this order will be hanged. This intense message conveys the immense importance of this battle to Ethiopia at the time. This war was deeply important to the Ethiopian citizens as they were defending their way of living, and a defeat would mean the crushing their way of life. They had between 400,000 to 800,000 men that were armed with mainly spears and bows, but also some rifles and some artillery. Less than 0.005% of them had military training, and there was an arms embargo imposed on them by France that harmed their chances at retaining their land and independence. Within their army, they had about 50 mercenaries, who were people employed by foreign countries to help fight for their cause. The Italians would later attribute Ethiopian successes to the help of these notable figures, exaggerating their numbers to be in the thousands. Upon the Italian East African forces, their army consisted of about 400,000 soldiers from Eritrea and 300,000 soldiers from Italian Somaliland that made up the indigenous regiments of Royal Corps of Colonial Troops. They too were reinforced by the Royal Italian Army, known as the Regina Aeronautica, as they carried lots of ammo and supplies using motor vehicles. This is contrary to how the Ethiopians were restrained to horse-drawn carts to fight their battles. Emilio de Bona was the practicing commander-in-chief on the northern front of the war, coming from Eritrea. He sought to take an offensive approach to catch enemies off guard and capitalize on that while defense was coming from the southern front of the Italian Somaliland. And on October 3rd, 1935, the Italians invaded Ethiopia without a declaration of war under Emilio de Bona. When they entered, they spread papers with the message of rebellion against Haile Selassie. They called them to the previous ruler. Ethiopia took this as a direct threat and declared war on them as a response. In the map to the right, you can see the green as Italian Somalia and Eritrea, and in the center is Ethiopia. The next days of October 5th and 6th would mark the capture and conquer of Adigrat and Adwa. Adwa being a crushing blow to the Ethiopians, as they had previously defended themselves there and won victory over the Italians. To this, Haile Selassie commanded an army that was planning to fight to withdraw. He advised other commanders to use extreme caution too. The next few days would mark lots of Italian victories with Ethiopian losses. At the same time, in Britain, an election was occurring, and Prime Minister Stanley Baldwin had a narrative of protecting the collective security, as he implied he would side with Ethiopia in order to keep stable the League of Nations. However, his cabinet had widely varied opinions and were very hesitant to oppose Mussolini. In the end, he decided to cede a large portion of Ethiopia to Italy, and the remaining portion would still be under the Italian sphere of influence. This idea was fostered by the desire to end the war quickly and peacefully. However, it would not prove this easy, as Mussolini had an idea of a Great Italy. He wanted to exert his control over the nations depicted in the left picture and further his fascist ideas. Mussolini wanted to be thought of as a new creation of the Roman Empire, furthered by imperialism, colonialism, and irredentism. But in December 1935, the Hoare-Laval Pact was proposed by Britain and France, as they hoped to end the Second Italio-Ethiopian War peacefully. The conditions were that Italy would gain Ogaden and Tigray, along with possess economic influence over southern Ethiopia. Ethiopia would then have access to seaports. As this proved advantage to Mussolini, he still did not accept it. He pretended to like it at first, all the while he was just trying to stall in order to see how far he could exert his control into Ethiopia. The Italian people were too on his side, as they were in favor of the ideal of pursuit of the Italian greatness. The fascist party would continue to grow upon this. A major battle in this war was known as the Ethiopian Christmas Offensive. It was a counteroffensive planned by the Ethiopians, which hoped to split the Italian forces in two. They would create an army of the center, headed by Ras Mulugeta, and take over Italian forces from two sides. In this attempt, the Ethiopians caught the Italians off guard, utilizing both a technique of surprise and their geographical advantage to help gain a win. This brave endeavor caused the League of Nations to condemn Italy's aggression and tried to create economic restrictions. However, the Ethiopians were ultimately defeated due to the disparity in modern weaponry they encountered. Compared to the Italians, they were poorly armed, especially because Mussolini had spent an entire decade acquiring poisonous gas and soon gave his commanders the authority to use something called Schrecklichkeit, which was a violent attempt at inciting fear through destroying villages and using gas. The second Italian advance took place as the Ethiopian Christmas offensive slowed down. They resumed their strategies at the First Battle of Tembian in January 1936. The Italians lost about 1,000 of people, while the Ethiopians lost 8,000. The Ethiopians would continue to endure great losses due to these poisonous gas attacks, in which sprayers were put in aircraft to douse the territory in a continuous lethal fog, killing anyone in close proximity. These techniques were further employed in the Second Battle of Tembian, as Ethiopian armies had to continue to withdraw. The next battle was the Battle of Mechu, which occurred on March 31, 1936, as another Ethiopian counteroffensive that was commanded by Selassie. He launched continuous attacks on the Italian and Eritrean forces, but ended up not being able to overcome them. They withdrew, and the Italians counterattacked them at another monumentous battle at Lake Shagi with mustard gas, as they suffered 9,000 deaths. This use of mustard gas marked a large overstepping from the Italian forces, as no one had ever employed techniques like this before. In a frantic response, Ethiopia employed guerrilla tactics, sparking a trend of resistance that would be followed after the fall of the capital. In this, they stole war materials, threw boulders off cliffs at convoys, kidnapped, set fires to offices and ammo dumps. This all caused the Italians to deploy more troops. In October, Italian commander Graziani attempted to remove Ethiopian forces from frontier posts. This was followed by the bombing of the cities of Harar and Jijiga, despite their reputation as an open city, in which all defensive efforts were abandoned. This is another part of the aggression of the Italian party. The last Ethiopian army was defeated at the Battle of Ogaden, where Ethiopians were drawn up behind a defensive line known as the famous Hindenburg Wall. The March of the Iron Will was an advance to capture Ethiopian capital with a demonstration of power in a column pictured in the bottom left. After much debate about what to do, Selassie decided to embark to Geneva and appeal to the League of Nations for help. In February, after the attempted assassination of Graziani by Eritrean rebels in Addis Ababa, there was a retaliation by the Italians known as the worst massacre in Ethiopian history. 30,000 were killed in the Addis Ababa massacre. After this, Mussolini rose to the highest popularity yet, with a title grasp on the Italian Empire, known as Mussolini's masterpiece. Haile Selassie felt defeated and called out to the League of Nations in a plea for help. He said, "It is us today, it will be you tomorrow," foreshadowing the violence to come in the upcoming years with World War II. He proved right, as in 1937, a few years later, there were few nations that didn't recognize the Italian Empire, as Mussolini remained dominant. It was with this platform that Mussolini entered World War II and caused great horrors to happen. Overall, the effects of the Second Italia-Ethiopian War resulted in the Peace Treaty of 1947 and the annexation of Ethiopia despite great losses. It exposed the weaknesses of the League of Nations as it was not united when they couldn't protect or control Ethiopia. And finally, and most importantly, it fueled the dictatorship that incited World War II, demonstrating the dangers of unchecked power. Thank you.